Probably gonna get some video of me sliding on my butt here in a moment. Called it. Should I have my ice cleats on? Probably. But do I want to poke holes in this new paint on here? No. Am I worried about falling on my butt? No. Am I a big girl? Watch it, mister. So the snow, as you can see, is falling again. And what's really funny is on the back of the property where I have the snow pole, it only shows we got about 2 inches of snow. But as you can see here, by where it's hitting on the shovel, it looks like we've got more like 8 inches of snow. The cars are completely covered as well. So I think the snow pole might not be in the best area, but my chores today are all going to be outside because I need to stay on top of making sure that the snow does not become a problem for me should I need to get off the property, and because in a week or so, maybe by the end of this week, I'll be getting another oil delivery for my oil tank. Imagine anybody who's seen the video I did from Christmas a couple years ago is probably pretty happy with the fact that I have a new ladder to the oil tank and a bigger oil tank of that. I wanted to clean off the fill gauge on the oil tank so that I knew how much oil I'd burnt through in the last couple of weeks since it was last topped off. At that point, he put in 154 gallons and it cost me roughly $500. From what I can see now, I've used about 1/8 of a tank. And that heating fuel is basically just diesel fuel. It's diesel fuel that has not been filtered to remove the purple color to it. So basically farm diesel, essentially. Don't quote me on that for anybody who is smarter than I am, but that's my understanding at least. But in the previous couple videos ago, I stated that it cost me on average around $700 to heat my home per month during the winter time. Yes, per month, not annually. Heating fuel is $3.27 per gallon in today's market. Previously, it was more expensive. And also a cord of wood cost around $385 over the last couple of years. So if I burn through a cord of wood and I go through a quarter tank of heating fuel, not including the electricity it would take to run the oil burner inside the cabin, it would cost me in today's market around $800 to heat the cabin for 1 month. And the oil burner has a thermostat on it that it only allows it to go down to 50 degrees in the cabin before it'll kick on. So the cabin can't get any colder than that, except for that Christmas a couple of years ago where I had run out of oil in my oil tank. And I got some feedback on that about, how stupid that was and why am I showing this? Like, it's dumb of me to brag about this. Not bragging. Who would brag about making such a deadly mistake? Certainly not I. But I did show it because it is reality that you can run out of heating fuel, that there could have been a power outage that night that caused it. I could have slept through the power outage, as I do most times when they happen overnight. I don't get up in the night to stoke that fire. I'm a sound sleeper. I sleep under blankets that keep me warm. I like it cold in the cabin, so I hadn't noticed that it had gotten that cold until I woke up with Kenai shivering next to me and everything having frozen in the cabin. After that incident, I was able to get set up on regular monthly autofills for the oil tank, so I don't ever have to worry about running out of oil again. I will tell you though that even with the heat running, the floor of the cabin can get extremely cold. If I leave anything sitting on the floor that's liquid, there's a good chance that it's going to freeze in the wintertime. Now, yes, my cabin is rather large. It's roughly 2,500 square feet in size. And so that is one of the reasons why it takes, so much to heat this cabin. Plus, it's older. These are 6-inch D-logs on this cabin. There's only about 1 to 2 inches of insulation between the inside of the log and the paneling that's up on the inside of the cabin. So not a whole lot of insulation. Logs themselves do not have a great R value. Wood can actually cause for heat loss in a structure. So my plan is eventually to take down that paneling, add some new insulation to the walls before putting up some new treatment on the walls. What that'll be in the future, I don't know yet. However, in the meantime, it really isn't as bad as it might sound to heat this cabin. Is it costly? Yes, it absolutely can be. But it's a choice I make to run the oil burner like I have been. Also, when I had the new roof put on, even though it has R38 insulation in it, it is not as insulating as the previous foam roof was. The reason for that is that foam trapped the snow up on the roof, which also provided more insulation inside the cabin. This new metal roof, without having any snow breaks on it, allows all that snow to slide off of it. Some heat then does escape through the roof as well. One of the other chores I have to do today is to plug in the car. Now, I've had the battery trickler on this car plugged in for a while, but I haven't plugged in the oil pan and transmission pan heater just yet. So I'm going to do that now because the temperatures are expected to drop below 0 over the next couple of days. According to the weather app, it hasn't happened yet, but I don't always trust the weather app. It's not actually that cold out here right now. It's about 18 degrees. So it's not that bad. But yeah, I got some more chores to do. So far done some shoveling, cleared off the oil tank so I could see how much oil I've used up, plugged in the cars. But I think the rest of the things I need to do, I'm going to do inside. Well, as you can see by the view out the window, what you can't see out the window because it's so dark out there, and all you're left with is a reflection of everything that's sitting in the living room, everything that should be going into that bathroom that I've been working on that isn't done because there is so much fine detail work in there that is just taking forever to complete. So there is a reveal coming up. It just is not going to be this week, unfortunately. However, I want to continue the conversation that I started outside about this upcoming cold snap and keeping the cabin warm. One of the things that I've shown over the course of the last few years is how I insulate my windows against the cold. Because these windows, while they're double pane windows, they're about 50 years old. I only have one of them that appears to have a leak in it. All the other ones appear to be fine. There's no drafts or anything that comes in around these windows because they don't open. They're just, a solid pane of glass. But I get a lot of suggestions about how I should insulate these windows. And most common is to either buy that shrink film that you can use a hairdryer to tighten up around the windows and block off any drafts, or the other one is to just tack up some plastic and go about it that way. And those are great suggestions. I'm not saying that those aren't. However, for me, it's a suggestion that I'm just not going to implement because of the fact that I already have materials on hand. And I'm a big proponent of using what you have on hand when you can. So this bubble wrap all came up with me from my move. So I didn't have to invest in this part of how I insulate my windows. And just to show you again, quickly, because I've shown this over the past few years how I do this, is I just mist the windows. You can either use water. In my case, I'm using a solution of vinegar and isopropyl alcohol in a ratio of 3 parts vinegar to 1 part alcohol. For those of you who are asked what my cleaning solution is. And then I literally just tap these into the window, just press them in, and that moisture helps to hold them onto the window. And believe it or not, they'll stay up like this for the most part throughout the winter. Every now and then I'll have one that for whatever reason falls down, but for the most part they stay up. Now that's not the only thing I do to insulate these windows, and I'll talk about the rest of it in a moment, but I get a lot of questions about which one's better for insulating factors. Is it the large bubble wrap or is it the small? Well, I ran some tests before filming this section so that I could talk to you about what the differences are. So the first thing I did was I lined the window completely with the large bubble wrap, and then I used my test long scope to take some thermal images of it. And yes, it is holding out the cold. I can touch this window and it is cold to my hand, but if I touch this plastic wrap, there's like barely any cold. But when I ran the test using the smaller bubbles, it seems to do a better job of holding out the cold. And I think I just figured out why just now as I was touching this. So on the larger bubble wrap, let me grab another piece of this here. On the larger bubble wrap, I don't know if I'm going to be able to show this on camera, but in between these, there's a pretty significant spacing between the bubbles here. It's like, you know, in a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch in between these large air pockets. So that's just, you know, there's nothing insulating between the air pockets. Where on the smaller film, there's like nothing hardly. You can see it better maybe on the back of this. But there's like hardly a gap between these air pockets. And so I think that's why the smaller film appears to be better at insulating the windows. If I were going to invest in a better way to insulate my windows, what I would do is either invest in newer windows that are triple pane, energy efficient windows, or I would invest in making some insulated shutters that I could open and close as needed, right? Because then I don't have to store anything downstairs. Right now I'm storing large sheets of insulation that I then tack up into the windows. They literally are cut to size and they just stay up inside the window itself. But it means that I can't see out the windows when I need to. So if I had the insulated shutters, I could then open them, peer out when I need to, close them, and keep the cold out. So speaking of keeping the cold out, let me show you one other thing that I've done over the years to help keep my cabin warm. One of the coldest areas of my cabin, believe it or not, are the doors, and especially around the bottom of the doors. Yes, I do need to add some casing around the doors still, and they could probably use some additional weather stripping. I have added more weather stripping over the last year, as well as come back in with some spray foam to tighten up any gaps. But getting the molding on these doors would probably make the biggest difference in the world. However, at the bottom of the doors is where there is definitely a draft that comes in. And over the years, again, I've just used what I had on hand. And that was to take a trash bag, a large black trash bag, and I filled this up with sand, rolled it up upon itself, and then taped it closed. As you can see, it's had its fair share of use as the tape is starting to come off and what have you. But this, again, was basically a no-cost solution to stopping drafts from coming in. I just throw it in at the bottom of the door, mold it to where I need it to be, right? Because with it being sand, sometimes the sand dissipates from one area to another, and so I'll just move the sand around and again tuck it up tight along the door, and no more draft. So that, along with hanging some heavy curtains on these doors, has done me a wonder over the years of keeping the drafts out. So a lot of times this cabin gets cold just because of the wind that comes whipping through this area. We don't get a whole lot of winter winds, but when they come through, they will basically strip the cabin of its heat and make it very, very cold in here. So fingers crossed that I do not have another perfect storm like I did a couple years ago, where I had allowed myself to run out of oil and the fire had died down overnight and I didn't notice, because I never get up to stoke that fire in the night. Never have, probably never will. And also that the temperatures were extremely cold that night with winds that also stripped the cabin of its heat. So with that, that is going to be the end of this video. I thank you for joining me again today, and I apologize that it was just a quick video this week, but I need to get back to work in that bathroom. So I'll see you again next week. Until then, enjoy these.